Hi guys, how you doing? Now, it's just a bit of a different intro here because the rest of the review was taken from a different recording because I feel like I have to explain what this video is. This video was initially going to just be a review of WildHearts S, the Switch 2 edition of the game WildHearts. But that then got me thinking because I was a big fan of the original release and
I love it!
So wrong. So, what this video now is a review of the original game, my thoughts on that game, the state of it on its release, after its release, what happened to it in the end, and then a segue into a review of WildHearts S, which is essentially the same as the bloody first one. There was a lot I wanted to go over about this game because I really, really like this game. Like, a lot. I really like this game, and it deserves so much more than what it got.
I love it!
I just wanted to get that out of the way so you know what kind of video this is. It's why it's a bit on the longer side because I had a lot to say about it. But with that said, let's get into it. A few years ago, a game was announced from Omega Force and Koei Tecmo, being published by someone else that I'll get to, the team behind the Dynasty Warriors franchise and the Toukiden series of games. A game designed to take on Capcom's 20-year-old juggernaut, Monster Hunter. The first trailers came out and it was looking promising, a Monster Hunter style game with some unique looking weapons, interesting monsters which seemed to control and be part of the nature around them, a focus on an actual narrative and characters as well as big open maps with varied landscapes and a free building system with karakuri, a mystical ethereal building tool allowing you to conjure various tools and machinery from nothing, supplementing combat, traversal and resource gathering seamlessly with gameplay. Everything was shaping up lovely for this brand new challenger to the Monster Hunter's gold crown. This was WildHearts.
Let it weave this seed into your soul. Let the spirits in the karakuri join your own. Let them drive you to hunt. For that is your destiny.
Set in the land of Azuma, you are a hunter driven to the eastern lands due to a backstory you get to choose, although it makes absolutely no difference to the story, and find yourself suddenly bound to a mysterious little device called a karakuri seed. This in turn gives you the power to summon machinery out of thin air to aid you in hunting in daily life. You start with basic boxes, but before long you'll be deploying torches to infuse your weapon with flames, springboards to catapult yourself around the battlefield, and even quick-use helicopter gliders. All of this is in aid of the local hub town of Minato, where the main narrative centres. As you progress through the story, you will solve issues for the town's many varied inhabitants, leading to an overarching story involving the karakuri and the power source, Celestial Thread. The amount of karakuri you can use is expansive, and I was genuinely surprised at how deep it goes. It has many combinations and various utility. There's even a skill tree that points gained hunting monsters are used to upgrade it, and the list is long, with various upgrades to your existing karakuri, new ones to unlock, and even purely cosmetic ones for base building and immersion. When the game launched, it launched to generally favourable reviews, with most publications praising its gameplay, combat, its creature design, its world building to its soundtrack and its atmosphere. WildHearts has a unique charm to its world. It's gruff but magical, whimsical but brutal, fantastical but still grounded. It really apes all the positives of the Monster Hunter series while delivering its own unique touches, from its original weapons to the karakuri system having you deploy giant mallets, cannons and barricades out of thin air during hunts, but providing utility for crossing the expansive maps with zip lines, spring platforms, wind generating fans to a full-on vehicle. And bear in mind that these aren't limited to specific points on the map. You can freely build any karakuri anywhere, provided you have the resources for it. You can deploy tents as fast travel points, towers to search for monsters and other secrets, workbenches, drying racks, smokers, picklers, automatic fishing machines, among many, many more. The Karakuri is WildHearts' core identity, it's ace in the hole and it works seamlessly. Of course, any Monster Hunter style game is going to fall flat on its face if it can't do the monster part or the hunter part well. Thankfully, WildHearts does both rather nicely. The monsters of this universe are known as kimono, creatures that are a fusion of animals and the raw power of nature, even the most basic kimono being the Rage Tail. Summons a whole cherry blossom tree when enraged. The monsters are varied and interesting, and some have incredible power, whether it being a king tusk sprouting roots of grass everywhere it stomps, to a lava back throwing chunks of magma in the air before suddenly deciding to do a flaming double drop kick across the map. Thankfully, your hunter has some equally mighty gear to battle these quite literal natural predators with. The weapons in WildHearts are varied, but you don't quite get as many as you would from say Monster Hunter's legendary 14 types. However, what you do get have been well thought out and definitely stand apart. From the basic Karakuri Katana, a simple sword which transforms into a longer range sword whip, to a bizarre Karakuri staff which can take the form of 5 different weapons during a fight, rapidly shifting between them in combos, finalising in a giant ultra greatsword. The Nodachi is a slow, deliberate greatsword weapon that charges into its signature finisher combos, and there's even a parasol weapon, this game's equivalent to Monster Hunter's longsword, a counter-based high damage weapon. The weapons, while unique, are quite limited in their combo pathings, but this is offset by each weapon interacting differently with each of your basic Karakuri, allowing for a fluid combat system, and just like with Monster Hunter, you really do need to just try them all. And you'll have plenty of time to try them, because let me tell you, this game does not mess around with difficulty. Even basic kimono will ruin your day if you get complacent, and they hit hard. You will become extremely adept at dodging, either using your hunter's built-in dodge roll or dodge slide, but also using Karakuri to evade or block attacks from angry kimono. And it's quite something to build all these constructs and watch an enraged manifestation of autumn leaves obliterate them. So what happened with this game? Why aren't we talking about WildHearts in the same breath as the aforementioned Monster Hunter, which still stands alone as a genre unto itself? You could mention the utter abysmal performance at launch, the huge frame drops and graphical bugs that plagued all versions at release, but especially on PC. That's going on to, I think, be the worst PC port of 2023. You could blame perhaps a lack of effective marketing or competition from other titles, but realistically, nothing of massive note came out around the same time as this. There is one thing, one lingering menace that hounded this game from its launch to its very swift demise nearly a year later. A malignant horror that followed this game from its inception to its grave. A name that strikes fear into the hearts of any new IP, as if it smells failure upon them, it will strike like a coiled cobra, ending their all too brief lives before they can say market conditions. I, of course, refer to EA.
EA Sports. Go fuck yourself.
WildHearts' biggest issue was it was a new IP being published under the EA Originals label, and the deal in place covered publishing across PC, Xbox and PlayStation. Now on the bright side, this meant WildHearts actually launched with full crossplay, certainly a rarity at the time. Its design allowed for teams of up to 3 hunters to tackle missions together, and you could even watch cutscenes together so you didn't get booted out for story beats, which was my biggest issue with the legendary Monster Hunter world. It had a lot going for it. Unfortunately, at EA, if you don't deliver instant success or explode into runaway sales, then you are considered a failure, and coupling that with a weak opening due to, number 1, EA forcing the game out ahead of schedule, so that, number 2, the previously mentioned performance issues due to that rushed release, and releasing a brand new IP with limited marketing and with a full price tag, means that barely 6 months after this game's launch, it was announced that the game would receive no further updates, and that was that. an extremely promising Monster Hunter competitor unceremoniously shuttered before it could truly realise any potential via expansions or sequels. And I think that is the biggest shame for WildHearts. This game has massive potential. You can go and buy the game right now on consoles or PC for around $5 to $10, which is criminally low for a game of this quality, and you will have a fantastic time. The performance has been improved dramatically. There are still people playing, although it is still absolutely viable to go through the game solo, and there are dozens of hours of content within. Which brings us neatly to now. You may remember when I was speaking about the EA Originals label that it covered PC, Xbox and PlayStation. Well, what that deal did not cover was Nintendo, as at that time the Switch was just nowhere near powerful enough to handle a game with this level of technical power. Nay, this game could not be run on a Steam Deck. However, when the House of N announced a shiny new Switch with much more power under the hood, this allowed Koei Tecmo to publish a new version of WildHearts with no connection to EA whatsoever. So now we have WildHearts S. So what makes this version different? Well, for starters, it comes bundled with all the DLC that did originally release for the original version. So they're all kimono, karakuri and all post-launch content. It also has much more consistent level of performance over its OG counterparts, due to, in part, this being a complete retune done specifically for a single platform rather than the 8 million they had to work on originally. It definitely works better docked, with some noticeable dips in frame rate and handheld mode during the more intense sections, but generally holds up well and this isn't game breaking by any means. Another surprise benefit to this retooling is that despite the game taking a bit of a graphical hit fidelity wise to get it running well on the Switch 2, it freed up some space elsewhere, and now instead of hunting parties having a max of 3 players, it has been increased to 4, which is of course the default for these styles of games, but it changes the dynamics of harder hunts quite a lot, and the difficulty just feels more balanced. I have to say though, that as much as the game generally looks fine, even bordering on pretty on the Switch 2, there is a kinda sharpness filter being layered onto the image, and it is quite harsh at points. Bright areas can look washed out, and it does just look very jagged at times, definitely some kind of upscaling being applied to kind of compensate for the lower quality. To my knowledge, there are no graphics options to tune or otherwise tweak what is on screen outside of some brightness or colour correcting settings for colour blindness accessibility. And that's really it. It really is the same game that launched a couple of years ago, but now handheld and can support 4 players. All my positives, my initial thoughts of WildHearts, all carry across to this new version, with the added benefit of an extra body in multiplayer, a much more consistent performance, and the ability to play WildHearts on the go, as the Switch 2 is a handheld console. But that also brings me to the new issue. When WildHearts first released, a terrible launch coupled with a publisher that didn't care if it succeeded or not and no real desire to support it, delivered a great game with full crossplay that no one played and was quickly and quietly killed. Now we have a version launching on a singular, brand new console with a much smaller install base, with no crossplay available as the balance changes do not apply to the EA published editions. Not only that, but the Switch 2 edition retails at £50, 4 or 5 times what it will cost on the other consoles at this time. I am already struggling to find players during hunts, and that's not going to get any better. Nintendo have been essentially discouraging developers to develop for the Switch 2, instead encouraging them to develop for the Switch 1 and utilising the backwards compatibility to be played on the Switch 2, which makes me think that the system has not performed to Nintendo's expectations. WildHearts S is probably the best third-party game currently available on the Switch 2. That is incredibly high praise. It is a phenomenal game, worthy of being a direct competitor to the behemoth that is Monster Hunter. And it is maddening that the things that are holding Wild Hearts back aren't even Wild Hearts' fault. Do I recommend Wild Hearts as a video game? Absolutely. It is a brilliant game. Do I recommend Wild Hearts on the Switch too? Possibly. If you have a Switch 2, and you only have a Switch 2, and you have not played Wild Hearts, I would give it my wholehearted recommendation. The ability to play it handheld when getting this game running on a Steam Deck was a practical impossibility, cannot be understated. The ability to play with parties of 4 is lovely, if you can find 3 other people to play with. And it is still, despite the graphical downgrade, a very pretty game with tons to do. But I feel it is worth pointing out that when I streamed this game live, I was the only person on Twitch streaming it in its category. Worldwide, I was the only one. Wild Hearts is an example of a game that just keeps getting dealt a bad hand. Despite a heap of promise, tons of replayability, new, unique and interesting monsters and weapons while doing something genuinely inspired with the Karakuri, it just keeps getting sent out in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was basically a launch period title for the Switch 2, and the system just has not established itself enough yet, as most people are still working the OG product, and the people who do buy a Switch 2 are going to spend their money on the first party titles. They're getting Mario Kart, they're getting Donkey Kong, they're getting Kirby. They are not spending 50 quid and buying a third party game that no one's marketing. So by the time that the Switch 2 solidifies as the proper replacement to the Switch 1, Wild Hearts S is just going to be buried. I absolutely think you should give Wild Hearts a try, and I fully recommend it as a game. I just don't know where I should be directing that recommendation. On one hand, the original released versions are cheaper by a lot, have full crossplay, and can even be played via EA Play. But it has worse overall performance, will never receive any updates, and is essentially an abandoned product. On the other hand, the Switch 2 edition has a few upgrades, has better performance across the board, is technically a new build with a new cycle, so could receive updates if it performs well enough, and has no involvement by EA in the slightest. Truly a conundrum that I cannot solve for you. But I genuinely think you should find out for yourself one way or the other. This game deserves better. Anywho, that'll do that. Listen, thanks so much for bearing with me on this one. It was a lot longer than I anticipated. A massive thanks go to my good friends at Koei Tecmo for providing a review copy of Wild Hearts S for the Nintendo Switch 2. And I hope this has been somewhat informative. And if you were even remotely entertained, and especially if you made it this far, my god, what a champion you are! Please, drop me a wee like here, a wee subscribe, a wee something. Check out my Twitch channel. I'm really trying to build these channels, and anything helps. But anyway, thank you very much, guys. Take care, and I will see yous next time.